One other thing before we close, I think people would like to hear your excitement about the upcoming Europa League final.
It's not excitement.
I mean, what a game.
Yeah.
What a game that is.
Between 16th and 17th in the Premier League. I mean, it's watching it today. Look, what an opportunity. What a game. A game with such jeopardy, such consequence for the winners and for the losers. A magnificent night awaits for the winner, and a horrible night awaits for the loser. And to be fair, I said it earlier on in the week, and I don't know if any other United fans are feeling the same. You know, there is an excitement about a final, but there's also that sickly feeling of it's got to go right. And that's always been the same in football. You know what's at stake, but it feels more at stake just because of the fact it's an English team. You know, in 2008, I wasn't in the squad, in the matchday squad, but I travelled with the squad to Moscow when we beat Chelsea. And it was a game where you just thought, if Chelsea had beaten us that night, how bad would it have been? How sort of, you know, just losing against Chelsea, one of the competitors in your own league. And then, you know, the United lads, Tottenham lads will travel there in 10 days' time and to Bilbao with excitement, wanting to win, knowing they can get Champions League football at the end of what's been a horrible season for both of them in the Premier League, and grab some sort of type of victory from defeat. And that's how it would be for, I think, Ange Postecoglou and for Ruben Amorim. Ruben Amorim's quotes today after the game, I think, were quite stark about, you know, the fact that, you know, every single weekend they seem to just let those United fans down. They've just switched off completely when it comes to the Premier League, and Tottenham have as well. And it's all eyes towards that final, so much at stake. Half anxious, half excited, half nervous,
And you've
half
just,
worried
you've
to
just
death.
talked about that Moscow final, yeah. That Moscow final that went to penalties, and John Terry's famous.
No.
I mean, a penalty shootout in Bilbao. I mean, it doesn't bear thinking about for either side, does it?
No, it doesn't, Peter. I'm sorry.
I'll let you drift away
No,
on that
just
thought.
it
Gary.
doesn't. No. Look, it's 10 days away. People might say, "Well, Gary, you played in finals, you played in FA Cup finals, and you know I didn't quite feel like this." But I do remember the couple of years where I missed a game or two and I missed a couple of finals, and I felt, you know, back then, that sickly feeling of the penalties in Moscow, and that horrible feeling of thinking, you know, in Barcelona when we lost that final, in Rome when we lost that final to Barcelona, that sickly feeling of being sort of there and watching, knowing the fans, 15, 20,000, 30,000 of them had travelled. Yeah, there's a lot at stake, a lot at stake.
Needs the victory in the Europa League the most, Manchester United or Spurs?
That is the million-dollar question, isn't it? It's so difficult. Look, I think Spurs need it because they just need to get the monkey off the back and win a trophy, don't they? I think Manchester United probably need to win it to get some momentum into next season, and something that we've touched on already, qualifying for the Champions League gives them that power in the transfer market in the summer. Now, that would obviously give the same power to Spurs, but I just feel, looking at both squads, I actually think the Spurs squad's in a better place. Now, obviously, they've not done well in the league this season. I think a lot of that has been down to a crippling injury list, but I think if Ange looks at his squad, he's probably fairly happy with it the way it is just now. I know he's missing a couple of players, James Maddison being one of those, but I think you look at the squad, it's strong, and I think they will do better in the league next season. I think Manchester United needs an absolute overhaul in the summer, so they need Champions League to allow them to attract top level players, but then Spurs need to win it just to win a trophy. Honestly, I can't answer. They've both had such poor seasons in the league. I cannot call it, but I do believe in fate a little bit, I have to say. And Ange has obviously said a couple of times he always wins in his second season.
Wouldn't that be vindication for those comments, though, if he does get it? I think he could play that on a loudspeaker to everyone when he comes in.
Yeah.
I always win a trophy.
Listen, I think you'd do a lap of honour of the Tottenham training ground, the press room.
Hopefully not in his thongs.
Exactly, yeah, indeed. But listen, I think it's interesting because Man United, they are going to back Amorim in the summer transfer window regardless. So Jim Ratcliffe gave that interview with Gary where he said, look, this is where we want to be. Their stated aim is to win trophies and compete at the top of the Premier League. Tottenham's is what, you know, we've had Hugo Lloris talking about the celebration, triumphalism around just getting to the Champions League final rather than winning it. We had Conte, those famous comments after the Southampton game before he left the club as well. And Jose Mourinho has also been quite scathing in some respects about the fact that he doesn't see them as a club that actually wants to push the boat out in a way that Manchester United would do and go and win something. And if you look at all the managers that have left, the Telegraph got a good piece today. They've all said that they've all gone on to better things. Even Nuno, who didn't look like a good fit, is with a Nottingham Forest side pushing for European football.
Looks great.
And so as far as Tottenham are concerned, they need to win it, because if they want to achieve what, if they want to get into the Champions League places, it would be a good salvation, redemption for what has been a poor season. But I think as far as Amorim is concerned, whether he wins it or not, Man United are going to back him.
OK, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, we heard from Ange this week, and he did get a little bit spiky with journalists that kind of compared the domestic season between themselves and Manchester United. What do you make of his demeanour? Because you're in press conferences a lot. I know you're not potentially in his press conference, but what do you make of his demeanour with him?
Yeah, I mean, I've spoken to Ange a couple of times when he was at Celtic before, and in a couple of Tottenham matches. Firstly, I think he made a good point during the week there. I think that was a really good point, because he was getting asked about Manchester United, and it was like, look, let's talk about what this means to Spurs. So I think he defended himself well there. I think he's a very engaging character. He's great to listen to in the build-up to a game, at a press conference the day before, or in his pre-match interviews. I just don't think he deals too well with the stress of a defeat. He's a bad loser. But show me a good loser, and I'll show you a loser. So he's a bad loser, and sometimes he doesn't come across too well in some of his post-match interviews. But that's just his personality.
I'm in two minds with Ange, because listen, I've been on this show before. I'm a big Ange fan, and I've even argued with friends who say, well, he's always arguing with the media. But what do you do if you're in his position? Everyone has a view on you. Some of it quite scathing, some of it not particularly complimentary. And yet, do you suck it all up, or do you go out and do you defend yourself? So Alex used to defend himself all the time, and he's a national treasure. Yeah. Why can't Ange Postecoglou go out and say, well, listen, you've got your view on me, this is what I think of your comments? Because that's not just directed at, to be honest with you, the media that cover him are very balanced, and I know a lot of those guys who are in that press room. I think he takes issue with a lot of what the pundits think of him. And, they're all professionals. You can almost let them go at each other in some respects. But he has a long track record stretching back to his time in Scotland, in Australia. He speaks up for himself. It's not any different now that he's in England. He is a guy who defends himself, and I say more power to him.
He's had to sort of fight and scratch to get to where he is. He's done it. He's gone round the houses to get to Spurs, to get to the Premier League. Managed in Japan. Started at the lower levels in Australia, been up in Scotland, and it's great to see a success story like that, and great to see that Spurs have given him an opportunity. And what we want to see in our game is characters. Yeah, we want characters, and he is one of those. It's just sometimes a difficult watching some of his post-match interviews when they've lost at home to Ipswich or something, and he's really down.
There's a terrific one on, if you go onto YouTube, there's a terrific interview where there's one pundit who basically said he should have been relieved of one of his posts when he was in Australia. And he gives it back, and they're in a split screen and they're going at each other, and that is who he is. He doesn't manage. He's not a shrinking violet. He's not the sort of person to just sit back and take it. And I say that's great.
And there's some amazing videos of his team talks as well. I don't know if you've seen these, but the way he puts himself across. And if you're a player in that dressing room, you want to play for him. And that'll hold him in good stead going into this final, because I'd imagine one of those rousing team talks will